Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Ernesto Morales, and I am the CEO of North Star Alliances, and I will be your moderator for today's session. Welcome to this webinar that is sponsored by the City of Los Angeles's Department of Cannabis Regulation, Business, Licensing, and Compliance, otherwise known as BLC, Assistance Program. BLC programming is designed to assist social equity applicants in Los Angeles in obtaining a commercial cannabis license and operating a successful cannabis business. This installment of our 2025 webinar series focuses on cannabis safety standards, part 2. Now, before we get started, let's take a moment to review some housekeeping rules. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and can be viewed only on DCR's learning management system after the editing process. You will be muted with cameras off for the duration of this webinar. This means that your camera and audio functions will not be available to you during this session. However, you will be able to see and hear all the panelists. There is an open chat box where you can interact with one another for networking or comment on the information that is being provided. Please use caution when sharing personal information in a public forum and keep your questions focused on today's topic. Please ask questions. Questions about today's subject matter in the Q&A box. We are gathering and responding to your questions throughout the presentation, and we'll have a question and answer session where you'll also get responses to the last portion of today's session, You are encouraged to utilize the question and answer box at the bottom pane of your Zoom screen. If you use the question and answer box for questions, everyone will be able to see the questions when they are answered. Finally, please note that today's content was not created by the Department of Cannabis Regulation or the City of Los Angeles and is for informational purposes only. This information is subject to change and does not replace or supersede the Los Angeles Municipal Code, nor does it constitute legal advice. If you have specific questions outside of today's topic, please call 213-978-0738 during business hours, which are Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. You'll be able to speak to a DCR representative then. And now I'd like to introduce our esteemed guest presenter, Matt Hayashi. Matt is an OSHA Authorized General Industry Trainer with Cannabis Clearwater, LLC, and an instructor for OSHA Industry Training for Cannabis Professionals. He's an achievement-oriented manager with a proven 14-plus years record of accomplishments in the pharmaceutical industry that includes experiences in sales, U.S. international business development, logistics, purchasing, contract analysis, and investor relations. So Matt knows his stuff. He founded Cannabis Clearwater, LLC, a full-service compliance company assisting the cannabis industry with permits, licensing, and growing a business. Now, I would like to introduce Matt and ask him to join me on screen. Welcome, Matt, and feel free to start sharing your screen and your presentation.
Thank you, Ernesto, and thank you to the City of Los Angeles, BLC, for giving me the opportunity. This is the second part of the cannabis safety, and I am going to share my screen. This is my contact information for anyone who has any questions. Please use this contact. Again, we will talk about cannabis industry, health and safety. This is part 2, a continuation, and we will discuss new matters, 3 topics. Okay. So today we're going to talk about cannabis industry safety and health that is required in the state of California from the Department of Industrial Relations. Everyone in the cannabis space needs to take a 30-hour OSHA training class. I am an OSHA trainer, an authorized OSHA trainer under general industry. Today we are going to talk about three things, which are key aspects to hazard awareness in cannabis. Number one, injury and illness prevention programs, also known as your IIPP. Number two, heat illness prevention guidance for indoor. And number three, workplace violence prevention. That is a new topic that is required to be taught under the 30-hour OSHA training. So today, established in July 1991, IIPP was created and under general industry as well as construction. And there are 8 essential elements. Essentially, what an injury illness prevention program is, it's a binder that has 8 essential elements that you're going to keep when you are in the cannabis space. But it's also used under general industry as well as construction. We'll get more into that as we go along with these slides. And the objective today, upon the successful completion, you're going to understand all of the guidelines, elements to the injury and illness prevention program and heat illness prevention and workplace violence. General requirements for your injury illness prevention program. Some of the key aspects here. Hand protection for people who are trimming. Everyone wears a glove, a knife proof glove, a cut resistant glove. Ear protection for people who are growers and who have warehouses. Remember, 85 decibels or higher, you must have ear protections. Okay. Body protection. If you are in a lab or in a manufacturing space and you are working on some kind of volatile, if you're in the volatile industry and you're using chemicals, you must be aware that you have to have body protection, some kind of suit, acid resistant gloves because you are using those kind of chemicals. Illumination, which I think is going to become a hazard point in the next 5 years because of all the bright lights. Everyone must be sensitive to the illumination. If you have a worker in a warehouse, in indoor, and there are a lot of you out there who have indoor warehouses, and you have like the Lumi Pros and all of your other lights, 8,000 watts and higher, you must remember that your eyes are very sensitive to light. And if you stay in a condition where it's bright lights all day, it may affect your eyesight. So one, you have to be aware of these things and you have to provide safety work sunglasses, provided by your employer. Water supply is very important, especially for the outdoor. Make sure it's clean, clear, and as well as cold. Make sure it's cold water, okay? Clean glass toilets at construction job sites. This is general industry, not construction. But again, if you are trimming and you are harvesting outdoors, you want to have a clean toilet, clean water, and make sure you have your washing station right next to the outdoor toilet, okay? Washing facilities and whatnot. Again, under the injury illness prevention program, your employer is required to establish, implement, maintain an effective IIPP. Now, what I said was earlier, it's a binder, right? Your binder that has all of these elements, and we're going to get to them, is a living, breathing binder. It is not one where it collects dust. It is one where a safety manager or the owners of the company will go through this binder and review every single facet of the IIPP. Now, it's important to remember that this is required in cannabis, but it's also required in other industries under general industry. And remember that in cannabis, what OSHA is trying to do is bring you up to speed, like everybody else, to these current regimens under safety. Okay, they're not just harping on you; they want you to bring you up to speed like everyone else. So do not feel like you're being, pointed to. Everyone else does it. The restaurant industry does it. Excuse me. The restaurant industry does it. Food delivery, textile. They all have to do the same thing that you have to do. It's just that OSHA wants to bring you up to speed so that nobody gets hurt. We will go over the elements. We will go over the code of safe practices, which is also required under your injury and illness prevention program. Under that program, you want to hold periodic meetings. You can have a safety meeting. I encourage all cannabis companies to have a safety committee, more than one. You could have 2 or 3, or however you want to do it. And it doesn't have to be from a hierarchical perspective. You normally want to hire people, workers, maintenance crews, managers. You want everybody involved in this IIPP and involved in a safety committee. A safety committee reviews these things on a quarterly basis, and it's great because it's great communication. It prevents people getting hurt, and it increases your hazard awareness. Okay? Like this last bullet point here, you could have a tailgate meeting or toolbox. You can call it, every 10 days. You can call it like a donut Friday or a bagel Monday, whatever you want to call it. But my suggestion is to have one once a week, every Monday or every Friday. That's a great communication piece for you to talk about what are some of the hazards that your operation is going through. Can somebody slip? Can somebody fall? Can somebody get hurt? Is someone going to trip in an indoor facility where there are no cones? Do you have cones? What your cleaning processes are like? When you mop the floor, are you communicating to everybody that you are mopping everywhere? These are some of the things that is important in cannabis. And you have to understand that the OSHA is a steward for the employees. So when OSHA gets involved, if there is an event like somebody gets hurt, they break a leg, they cut a finger, OSHA only gets involved if somebody gets hurt. And what they want to do is, prevent that from happening. So in order to do that, they have this injury illness prevention program. Okay, code of safe practices, right? Every employer must adopt a written code of safe practices. These are the ones down here, the bullet points. That is specific to operations, designed to address hazards, communicate safe work practices, and company expectations. Policies, yeah, they include that. General safety rules, that's important. More focus on the accident reporting procedures, specific hazards, disciplinary actions, visitation, inspections, and all that. This is part of your code of safe practices. What it is it's a document that every employee should sign, review and sign, saying, yes, I follow these safe practices in cannabis. So for example, if you're running a trimmer and you want to practice safe, PPE, and you practice not wearing any jewelry, then you're going to practice that, and then you sign off on that. Okay, it's a good practice. I believe everyone should do it, especially in cannabis. As you know, cannabis is fairly new, and now that it's going to get normalized and standardized, this is probably one of the most important pieces under your injury and illness prevention plan. Okay, so for new employers are exempt from having an IIPP for 1 year. This is under the THCCR section 1509 and 3203. Excuse me. No civil penalty for any new employer for a period of 1 year after the date the new employer establishes a business in California. So, what does that mean? It means that if you want to start a cannabis business, it could be a dispensary, a lab, a cannabis cultivation, cannabis nursery. It could be cannabis transportation too. Don't forget, you distributors out there, you fall under the IIPP as well. home delivery systems, all that stuff. Anybody who wants to start a cannabis business, you have 1 year to create your IIPP. Okay. They'll inspect it. They'll want to see it. That's one of the first things that they do is when they do their formal inspections to any cannabis operation, they want to see the IIPP. Well, for new businesses, they give you a 1 year to get this thing up and running. After the 1 year, so if you're a cannabis business, excuse me, and you've been running after a year and they ask for your injury and illness prevention plan, and if you don't have it, they will cite you for it. Okay, that is your warning. Now the citations, it could be a monetary citations. Most of the time they're general warnings. They give you an ample amount of time to create an IIPP. If you do not have one and they follow up on their inspection, it's more than likely that you will get a citation with some, some penalty, some fine. I don't know what the dollar fine is, but they will think about it and realize you've had it over a year. We've given you enough time, and now here's your penalty. Okay. We provide injury and illness prevention plans. If you need an injury and illness prevention plans, we will be more than happy to give it to you at no cost. It's a good template. Everyone should have one. Again, under the enforcement, injury and illness prevention programs, this was issued in 1992, 95, was updated, and we cover all of the requirements that is in for cannabis. Okay, we will go over the next slide, I believe, is like the elements. So we're going to go over these things. Okay, it's under your policy and procedures manual that you'll have it. And again, if the employer does not have the operative, like I said, operative is being the key word, like a living, breathing document. The penalty for any serious violations shall not be reduced for any reason. From that perspective, OSHA, we remember OSHA is a steward for the employees. They protect employees, they protect employees. Okay. And it's not just you. Again, it could be in the school system, it could be in the food industry, textiles. This also happens in construction and maritime and agriculture as well. But you need to have an operative IIPP. Okay. This will all make sense when we go through the elements. Okay. They have here effectiveness is based on written documentation and employee interviews, right? It's a living, breathing document. Okay, so here are your 8 essential elements. These are the 8 subjects that must be in your binder. Okay, your IIPP binder. Number 1, responsibility. We'll go over these elements. Number 1, responsibility. Number 2, compliance. Number 3, communication. Number 4, hazard assessment. That's your PPE. Number 5, accident and exposure investigation. Those are your records 300, 301, and 301A. Number 6, your hazard correction. Number 7, your training and instruction. You want to have really good and clear training records. I cannot stress that enough. One of the few things that OSHA officers like to inspect are your training records. And if your training records are not clear and precise, and there's some ambiguity to it, they will give you a citation. Now, it's not going to be a monetary fine, but they will document it. The thing is this, when OSHA gets involved and they start doing these citations, a couple things happens. There is a process to their citations. They have to justify it. They have to submit it. And once it's approved, then it goes on to their website, the OSHA website. And you could look up a company, any company really, and see what happens when they get a citation. All citations that is verified and approved are on their OSHA website. Okay. And then number 8, record keeping. Okay, super important, very important. I highly recommend anybody who is going into the cannabis space take a record-keeping OSHA training class. It's available. We do it, but I highly recommend it. This is a standalone document, like I said. OSHA suggests that every IIPP maintain at each fixed work site. So for example, if you have a working station or at a manufacturing site, have one there, have one in the warehouse. My personal suggestion is this: minimum of three injury and illness prevention programs. So 3 binders. That's my suggestion. Minimum of 3 binders. The first binder is going to go to like a break room or some room like a warehouse. Okay, that's the first one. The second one is going to be owned. I use that word pretty serious. Owned by the safety manager or the person who's overlooking or running the safety operations at your facility. They're going to have one. And then finally, the third one is going to go to the CEO or the owner of the cannabis company. Yes, they get one too. They have to understand that safety is very important. And that's a minimum of 3. They recommend at every fixed work site. I recommend a minimum of 3. And that is because when you get an inspection, you will want to know where these IIPPs are. Now, at fixed work sites, I understand why they're talking about this, and I'm all for it too. You want to train everybody at your operation, at your facility, the contents of your injury and illness prevention program. The reason is everyone's involved in safety. Safety is not just a one-person thing. Safety is everybody, from maintenance all the way up to the CEO. Okay. You train everybody to the IIPP because it doesn't look good when you get an inspection from an OSHA officer and they have the right to talk to anybody. So they can't pull a person aside and say, hey, do you know where your IIPP is, your injury and illness prevention program? And it doesn't look good when the employee says, yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about, right? They don't know. That tells the OSHA officer or the OSHA inspector that this cannabis operation is not doing their job in terms of safety. They're not doing their job. They're not training. Then they go down to the OSHA officer will start doing the list. Like, can I see your training records? Can I see your injury reports? And go down this rabbit hole of stuff, right? So to alleviate that, I recommend 100% train all of your employees to your injury and illness prevention plan, right? And then create a work committee, a safety committee. Okay, it works. It's the best. Okay. This is some of the resources that I created here. This is a sample written injury and illness prevention program. Okay. And these are the bullet points. You're going to write them down in your binder. You are not required to use this program, but if you do, well, you are required to use this program in the cannabis space with the authority and responsibility. But in restaurants, it's different. Carefully review the requirements for each 8 elements. Determine how they will be implemented in your workplace. Okay. Some of these things might be a 1-pager. Some of these other things might be 20 pages, depending on your operation. Okay. Compliance side. Do you have the appropriate PPE? Communication. Do you have a communication log? Are people signing off on all the sharps? So for example, when it's harvest time, harvest is coming up, and you are going to 1099 your trimmers. And are you going to use the hazard assessment? Are you going to have them cut and trim flower without gloves? Are you going to use gloves? Are you going to wear protective eyewear, goggles? Are they allergic to the terpenes? That's one of the questions that I ask everybody in the cannabis space. Are any of your employees allergic to the terpenes, those high terpene profiles, right? These are some of the things that you want to have in your IIPP, okay? Hazard corrections, training and instructions, and record keeping. Almost sneezed there. Okay, number one, management and commitment, identification and persons responsible for implementation, right? Who's involved in this? Well, I said everybody, right? Names. Who's in charge of shutting down a cannabis operation? Who has the authority to shut down for safety reasons? Well, normally it's your safety manager. Who has the authority to act on disciplinary actions for employee safety violations? Normally it's your safety employer, your safety manager, person who runs the safetiness of this. So that's number one. Number two, have a system for ensuring employee compliance with safety and health work practices, your policies and procedures. This is the bulk and that constitutes the entire thing of IIPP. Normally, your safety manager is in charge of this, that oversees this whole entire program. Okay. Are you using positive reinforcement? It's been shown that positive reinforcement in cannabis has a 4-to-1 ROI return. So why not? Right? You might as well use positive enforcement. Employees like to be recognized for doing their hard work. I mean, who doesn't like to be recognized, right? So when you do that, what that means is they come home feeling like they've done a really good job. Their work has been recognized for it. They go see their loved ones and they are happy to be back the next day and put a greater output. Generally speaking, and there's data for this, when you do a program like this and you do recognize people for their hard work, I would suggest, show it to them, tell everybody at work how much this person has done a great job. What that does is it does lower the injuries at your cannabis work site. And then again, like I said, it also increases your ROI. Okay. Communication is key with employees on safety and health and cannabis. No punitive fear of reprisal. No one's going to get fired. Use friendly, understandable word and verbiage, right? And pull them aside. This is not like a corrective action type of thing. This is more of communication type of thing. So for example, if you are running a conveyor belt and there's some loose wiring, you want to communicate that to everybody that, hey, there's some loose wiring. Communicate that to everybody, right? Talk to everybody. Get them trained to this stuff so that they understand what lockout tagout is, right? Again, meet quarterly on your safety committee. Meet on a quarterly basis. Review worksite inspections, investigate reports and hazardous conditions. Number 4, procedures for identifying and evaluating workplace hazards, including scheduled periodic inspections. I like to practice viewing your periodic inspections. I like to do that every day. I've seen lots of cannabis manufacturers where they don't do it, and I could tell because the place is messy, it's unorganized, the employees look lost when they're doing the job. But I've also seen cannabis manufacturing companies where they run a tight ship and the employees exactly know what to do. They are wearing the appropriate PPE. They are learning and understand the safetiness of certain chemicals. They know how to read an MSDS, right? They know how to report a finding. If there's a workplace hazard, they know how to report that to their general manager. So here, it's a wonderful tool to have because you want to train them. You want to train them to identifying these workplace hazards, okay? Really, really important stuff. Procedures for investigating occupational injury or occupational illnesses. You must provide show documented evidence of the investigation. Here is part of the workplace related injuries. You want to document those as much as you can in great detail. Again, people who are in the OSHA space go over the 300 records, 300, 301, 301A. They do their investigations, they do their corrective actions, and everyone is okay. Number 6, method or procedure for correcting unsafe or unhealthy working conditions, work practices, work procedures. A lot of it is cleaning, house cleaning. And when I go off into a cannabis facility, I like to see how clean it is. That alone says millions to me as an OSHA inspector. When I see something that is dirty, I want to see their cleaning logs. And if they don't have a cleaning log, that says a lot. But when cannabis operations do have a cleaning log, that makes me very happy because, yeah, they have a cleaning log, but more importantly, it means that they care for their employees. They're able to go, the employees are able to go home, clock out, and see their loved ones, okay? Very, very important. Training, provide all training to every single job there is. If they're new to a trimmer, you want to train them to the trimmer, have them sign off on it, you sign off on it, and they have the right to be retrained, okay? It's not just the training, but they do have the right to be retrained if they forget how to do something. The other reason to be trained is if you are modifying the machine or if you are taking down the machine. You have the right to, as an employee, you have a right to ask to be retrained. And as an employer, you must retrain these employees if you're definitely modifying a machine or if you're taking it off of your operations, just for communication, from a communication perspective, right? The training part, you have them sign off on it. The safety manager signs off on it, and then you're okay, right? Put that in your IIPP. You're good, okay? Oh, they missed one here. That's okay. Record keeping systems, your work-related injuries, persons who conducted the inspection, discrepancies found, action items, and time tracking of corrective actions. You must records must be kept for 1 year. 1 year's fine, but I'm a big believer in keeping it for like 6 or 7 years because you never know. These record keeping systems, OSHA has a right to request for a record keeping system. In the event that somebody, if the injury is fatal, they're going to want to keep the record keeping, all of your record keeping stuff, and they have the right to do so. And you have the right to you have to forfeit those documents, and they may hold on to them for a little while, but then they give them back to you. And if not, then you have to create a whole new documentation system. Okay, that's really, really key when it comes to your record keeping system, particularly in cannabis. I don't see too many accidents. There have been a few major ones, not in California, but more so like in the Midwest and the East Coast, especially like people who are working in the volatile industry, making all the vape pens and all the vapes. There have been explosions. People have died from allergic reactions in cannabis space. There was an incident, OSHA recorded it, where someone had an allergic reaction and the person died. And so then they had to fill out all of the injury reports and they had to do their inspections. So very important, very, very important. Okay, so we talked about the IIPP. Now we're going to go off into the second topic, the heat illness prevention guidance. California, employers must take steps to protect the workers from heat illness, both indoor and outdoor. But today we're going to talk about indoor. Recognizing your heat stroke and heat exhaustion, okay? Heat exhaustion, if the employee feels faint or dizzy, excessive sweating, cool, pale, clammy skins. Heat stroke is when they're not sweating, okay? Either way, you want to pull them aside, get them cooled down, loosen up the clothing, call 911, 100%. Call 911 immediately for heat stroke, okay? Indoor workplaces, cool down areas must be kept at a temperature below 82 degrees. So if it's more than 82 and they request to be cooled down, you have to provide them an area where it's less than 82 degrees. Okay, shade and cool down areas must be blocked from direct sunlight. Okay, very important, especially on the hot days during the summertime and in the fall when you're harvesting. Very, very important. Employers are responsible, on the next slide here, employers are responsible for buildings with or structures 5 or more floors or 48 feet above or below ground. You must have a two-way emergency communication system. Okay, required. Okay, very required. And then your heat illness prevention guidance, encourage workers to take preventative cool down rest periods. Big proponent. Everybody should take a break. Everybody should take a break, right? Back in the day when cannabis just started becoming legal in 2018, a lot of the trimmers were being being paid very well, but they were also sitting down in hot areas for like 10, 12 hours a day. Well, that was then, this is now. And a good employer should encourage workers to take a preventative action by cooling down your workers. Give them a cool down break. Give them a cool down break. Okay. Provide water. Provide cold, clean water. Okay. That's very, very key. All right. We do not want heat strokes and not in the cannabis space, right? We don't want that. So monitor workers taking such rest periods for symptoms of heat related illnesses. You know what that also applies to dehydration sickness. It doesn't have to be hot to get dehydrated, right? You want to make sure that they have enough water intake. You want to make sure that they're balanced, they have enough electrolytes in their system. You do not want them fainting, right? So this is a great way to, you know, you could put that in your plan as well under your heat illness prevention plan. Measure the temperatures inside. How hot is it going to be? 99 degrees? Is it going to be 85 degrees? What is it, right? Heat index and record whichever is greater whenever the temperature or heat index reaches 87 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? That's very important. More rest breaks, okay? Implement control measures to keep workers safe. Feasible engineering controls must be implemented first. You can implement an engineering control like open up a ventilation. You can do that type of stuff. You know, if you have air conditioning, turn that on, right? But first and foremost, it all comes to employees. You want to make sure that they are okay. Are they hot? Are they not hot? Drink lots of water. Okay? A lot of inspections that are required in cannabis. One of which is the heat-related illness, because everyone knows that it's a warehouse. So they might ask for, the OSHA inspector might ask for a heat illness prevention plan. Got to have one. We provide those. If you need one, let me know. I'll be more than happy to give one to you. Okay. We are finally in workplace violence prevention. This is a new topic for the 30-hour OSHA training, and it is practiced in every other industry too, construction, maritime, and agriculture. Filed with the Secretary of State on September 30th, 2023, less than 2 years ago, commencing January 1st, 2025, so it's really new. Authorized a collective bargaining representative of an employee to seek a temporary restraining order and an order after hearing on behalf of the employee and other employees at the workplace. What does this mean, all of this stuff? Well, it means this. The bare minimum of a workplace violence prevention is a verbal threat. Something like, I am going to hit you. I am going to beat you up. That is considered a workplace violence prevention. Did it happen? Did the person say they were going to beat you up? It doesn't really matter. The minimum requirements, as low as a verbal threat, is considered a workplace violence prevention. Okay. So you have to establish a workplace violence prevention plan. That is included in your injury and illness prevention plan. Okay. They need that. And it's very important. It's very new. They want to practice that. Creating a workplace violence prevention plan. It is a 1-page, or it could be a 2-page, depending how big your operations are, will ultimately determine the size of your workplace violence prevention plan. Okay, covered from the CEO all the way down to your maintenance, or you can do a vertical or horizontal thing where everyone is trained. Because let's face it, in this day and age, you never know when someone's going to get hurt. The CEO, as well as a field worker, as well as the managers, they get triggered. They could have a bad day. People have bad days, and they may just take it out on their employees, right? It happens. And if it gets to that level, yeah, you have to abide to the workplace violence prevention plans. Call your security officers, okay? Any act of violence right here, or threat of violence that occurs in a place of employment. It could be at the parking lot. That is still a workplace employment. You have 2 types of violence. Number 1, violence committed by someone who has no legitimate businesses at the work site, like a stranger, right? Number 2, violence directed at employees, customers, clients, patients, or visitors. One of the key things here is, if an employee gets hurt in a workplace violence at work, the safety manager is still required to fill out your injury log. You still have to record it, and you still have to submit it. It's not like someone got hit and nothing happened. No, you have to document it, and the police would do their documenting. The authorities would do their own documenting. But from a company's perspective, the safety manager is still required to fill out the injury report. Okay. Minimum of 1 separate toilet facility for each 20 employees. How can this is part of the preventions, right? Minimum of 1 separate toilet facility for each 20 employees of each sex, okay? Another one, under temporary field conditions, not less than 1. Water closets not feasible, then non-water carriage facilities shall be provided. Make sure you keep your water clean, okay? Separate, right? Shall be kept clean and maintained. Does not apply to mobile crews that have reliable transportation. Okay. The bathroom situation is such that I agree. 20 employees, you should have a separate toilet. Okay. You should have a separate toilet. Another one for your workplace violence prevention plan: the names of persons responsible for the implementation. Normally, it's your safety manager, but you can have a workplace violence prevention committee. More than 2 people can get together, talk about things on a quarterly basis, and record it and jot it down and implement those changes, right? It's all about the employee. You want them going home feeling safe and feeling protected. Effective procedures for employee involvement in developing and implementing a plan. Like I said, make it a donut Friday. Just talk about the workplace violence. It's okay if there's none, if it's none, right? Procedures to communicate with employees regarding workplace violence matters. Again, pointed out. This is your fact sheet that I'm willing to send it out to anybody who wants one. Really, really good reading material. Really, really good stuff. So today, in review, a few things here. We went over the 8 elements of your injury and illness prevention plan in the cannabis space. Remember, it is a living, breathing document. It's okay to make those changes. We went over the heat illness prevention for indoor. Train everybody. Everything, it's all about the training. And then we went over the workplace violence prevention plan. Side note, know your exit routes in the event that there is a violent act. Know your exit routes. So again, thank you so much, and I will open it up for questions.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, definitely. Let's move on to questions. And I have some questions here. So let me go ahead and start asking those.
Okay.
Really good information, Matt. Really, obviously just a wealth of knowledge and necessary information for all businesses in the cannabis space and others as well. So really appreciate that. And so let's start off with a question. What are the key components of the injury and illness prevention program?
One of the things is you must have a copy. They want to see a injury and illness prevention plan at every work site. So for an OSHA inspector, they would like to see one at every manufacturing facility. I say a minimum of 3: the CEO, the owner, the safety manager, and one like at a break station, a break room. But if you have a big giant manufacturing space or warehouse, I definitely recommend having one at every station.
Okay. No, that's helpful. Well, let's ask this question. What happens when I don't have an injury and illness prevention program?
Great, that's a really great question. I get this all the time. You get a citation. you you get a citation. OSHA will um, issue out a citation. It may not be a monetary fine, but they may give you some time to create one, and then they will follow up. On the second round, when they do their follow-up inspection, and if you do not have an injury and illness prevention plan, it's more than likely that they will issue out a monetary fine.
Okay. No, that makes perfect sense, and that's why it's definitely so important to have that
Yep.
that information. So I'm going to ask you another question relative to the prevention plan. What are some of the requirements for? You had mentioned this about the heat illness, and obviously we've been going through such a heat wave these last couple of weeks. What are some of the requirements of having a heat illness prevention plan?
You want to have first of all, training records is key. Training records is key. So you want to train everybody to your heat illness prevention plan. What's part of the training? It could be a 15-minute training. It could be a half-hour training that I will leave that up to the safety manager. And the topics vary based on the environment and the culture that they are working at. So for example, if you are a grower that that has a growing operation in Riverside, it gets hot out there, they may want to implement a water break training plan where they all take water breaks every 15 minutes or every half hour, depending on what their operation is, right? Versus if you're towards the coast up there near Santa Barbara where it's cooler, they may not need a water break. However, the sun is still there. They may need a timeout from getting out of the sun. So they offer shade breaks, and the employer could pull up a big giant tent where they get breaks more than the requirements of under CCR, and they could have like a shade break. They may not need water breaks, but again, they may need some shade. You have to remember, anything over 80 degrees, any employee can legally request for shade if it's over 80 degrees. And in California, it's 80 degrees all the time, right? So depending on the environment that they're in, they have to, really figure out what's best for them. But one of the key components to this whole thing is training. Training is key. They will inspect it.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. Let's definitely drill down a little bit more. You had mentioned, citation. You mentioned monetary fine. Can OSHA basically shut you down if you don't have an injury and illness prevention program?
That is a really great question. I get asked that all the time.
I only try to ask the great questions.
Yeah.
That's my goal.
I do this I ask my students all the time. Does OSHA have the power to shut you down? And if you're an operator, cannabis operator, whatever, does OSHA have the power to shut you down? The short answer is they do not. OSHA does not have the power to shut you down. You have to remember, OSHA is a steward for the employees. They protect the employees to make sure they are safe and they go home to see their loved ones. Now, it's a great world. That being said, OSHA has close ties to their local county judge, and they have like a one-way ticket to get a warrant. It doesn't take that long for the judge to issue out a warrant to a cannabis operation where somebody really severely got hurt or died, and the judge will have no hesitation to have a warrant to shut down or close the cannabis operation. Right. So what they do is OSHA's attorneys will talk to the judge about an incident, and the judge will justify it, saying, yep, we'll write out the warrant to shut it down or close the operation, hand the warrant back to OSHA. OSHA will bring the warrant back to that operation facility, and that's how they are able to shut it down. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. So it's just a ongoing, level that OSHA will take if you're non-compliant, right? It's a citation, it's the monetary, and heaven forbid that you're still not compliant and they're knocking on your door and you're not addressing the issues that they're bringing up. Then they'll take, because to the end, in your end point that you mentioned, it's about the safety of the employees, right? It's about the safety of the team. So they want to make sure, to your point, that people get back to their families at the end of the night. So I think it's a real key point to make.
I think it's and again, not it's not because OSHA is not against cannabis. OSHA, from a federal perspective, they're not against cannabis. If anything, they're for it. What they do care about is employees coming home to see their loved ones, right? So they're not just, if there was an incident where somebody died at a cannabis facility, it's not that it's because they're cannabis related. It's because somebody died. It could be in a manufacturing,
Any industry, yeah.
any industry, they have the power to shut any building. There's the tuna fish incident. You could have a tortilla factory, whatever. They will not have, without any hesitation, get a warrant from the judge to shut it down in the event that somebody died or it was a really bad injury.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So I'm going to ask kind of a closing kind of question, if you will. And bringing all your expertise, all your knowledge relative to all this very important stuff. If I'm starting a company and I'm looking to make sure that I'm doing things right as it relates to this area of very important area of doing business in the cannabis space, what are the top two things, Matt? You're going to say, listen, you're starting a business. These are the top two things that you have to focus on. You need to focus on to be, one, successful, but also compliant and doing the right thing and making sure you're in the right space. You're starting in the right space. What would be those top two things, Matt?
So the number one thing is take your 30-hour OSHA training class. It is required by the state of California Industrial and Relations. Anybody in cannabis needs to take the 30-hour. And I get it, because they're not just harping on you. They really want you to be an advocate for safety. I totally get that. So number one, take your 30-hour OSHA training class. Really important. The thing is, I would suggest, don't take the video one. Take a live training class, because it opens up for more questions versus the video doesn't really give you the opportunity to ask any questions. So that's
Sure.
number one, take your 30-hour. Number two, what is the culture of the cannabis company? Time and time again, now that I've been doing this like quite a while, time and time again, safe employees equals more revenue and less workers' comp. CEOs love it from a business perspective. Safe employees, 4-to-1 output, really, really important. And this is the reason why. If you have a worker who punches in and does a really good job, and they are safe, and they get to go home to see their loved ones, so the data is there. They are more likely than not to put in a greater work output the next day, because they know they are in a safe environment, that there are no hazards, there are no chemicals around. They believe in the safetiness of the system. So what does that do? That lowers the injury rate. So then that means that the workers' comp would be lower. Not only that, people are thriving, they are excited, they're positive, which means they will have a greater output on their job. If their job is to make 5,000 vape pens, they may crank out 5,550 vape pens, because they're happy. They know it's safe, right? And they did not get hurt. So those are my two high priority things. Take the 30-hour and then look over your workplace culture. Are they happy? Are they safe?
Well, that's why you're the man, Matt. I really appreciate the information, the presentation, such valuable information. And I'm going to close it out by saying thank you again to our presenter, Matt Hayashi. And thank you for all of you who attended this informative webinar offered by the City of Los Angeles Department of Cannabis Regulation. This webinar recording will be found on DCR's Learning Management System. If you have any questions on accessing your account, please email dcr.sep@lacity.org. Thank you again for joining us and have a great, wonderful rest of the day.